Let's take a look at some basic formulas for your Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Let's start off with one of the most common calculations that we'll do in our Excel spreadsheets, and that's addition. Since it's so frequently done, we do have some shortcuts and we're going to share them with you. One shortcut would be to simply select the cells you want to add up and the blank cell where you want the answer to go into. This works great if the cells are all adjacent or in consecutive cells. And then all you need to do is click the Auto Sum button on the Home tab of the ribbon. It will put the total in there, in this case 16, and it behind it has that formula that makes it so that whatever values happen to be in cells B3, B4, or B5, it will go ahead and update. So for example, if this value changes to a 0, it will recalculate. I'm going to do an undo. So in the top left corner, there's an undo button, just getting back to the proper value. And let's go on and do the calculations there for February. So once again, selecting the cells that I'd like to add up and the blank cell I want the answer to go into, and just clicking the Auto Sum button. Same for March. Just going to zoom out a little bit, holding down the Control key and just scrolling the wheel on the mouse. And what I need to do a little bit further down in the spreadsheet is to add up all the individual toner cartridge values. So I need to add up what's in cell B3, B10, and B17. And the way I'm going to be able to do that, a little bit of a different approach because the numbers don't sit adjacent to one another like we saw in our original equation. So what we'll do in this case is stitch the formula together using a combination of the keyboard and the mouse. Once again, I'm in cell B23. I'm going to start off by typing in the equal sign. Then I take my mouse and I click on the first toner cartridge that I'm looking to add up in the equation. That's cell B3. It writes it into the formula, which I can see on the formula bar, and I can also see in the cell itself. Continuing on, I need to type in the plus sign. Then go ahead and click the next toner cartridge value, which is in cell B10. My formula is starting to take shape. B3 plus B10. I need another plus sign, and then I can click on cell B17. That completes that formula. I can use the Enter key on my keyboard, and I get the total for those three values, 33. Let's go ahead and click in cell B24, and we'll do the same for our paper supplies. So stitching the formula together, beginning with the equal sign, I'm going to click on the first paper value, which is in cell B4, typing in a plus sign, clicking on the second paper value in cell B11, one more plus sign, and then the last paper value, giving that a click as well, and finishing it off with the Enter key. Last but not least, we want to add up the staples, so I'm going to type in the equal sign, click on the first staple value in B5, then it's plus B12 plus B19, and pressing the Enter key to complete that. Now, if we want a grand total, we can go ahead and select the three values and the blank cell underneath and revert back to using that auto sum, just giving that a click, and I can see that my grand total there is 57. And now moving on to subtraction, I'm going to click the Subtraction tab, and we'll look at calculating the profit here, which of course is going to be the sales minus the costs. In cell D4, we'll create a formula by typing in the equal sign, clicking on the cell that has the sales, that's B4, type in a minus sign, and then click on the costs in cell C4. Press the Enter key, and we get our profits. Since we need the same calculation or formula for the remaining months, we're going to copy those. And the way that we can make that happen is by dragging the fill handle in the bottom right, clicking and dragging to copy the formula. Let me do an undo. There's another way to make that happen as well, just double clicking the fill handle, and that will copy down the formulas as well. Remember, when you copy formulas in Excel, they adjust relative to where you paste them. So while the original formula was B4 minus C4 in the February row, it adjusted that, and now it's looking at B5 minus C5. Okay, so it will adjust according to where you paste it, and that is what you want to happen in most cases. Moving ahead to multiplication, on the multiplication tab, we're going to be calculating the gross pay, which will be the number of hours times the rate. So in cell F2, we'll begin by typing in the equal sign, clicking on the hours in cell D2 for our first employee, followed by the symbol for multiplication in Excel, which is an asterisk. Next, we'll click the hourly rate. My formula is complete, so I can press the Enter key. So the gross pay for the first employee here is $443.75, and clearly I need the same formula for the remainder of my employees. So let's double click the fill handle in the bottom right to copy the formula quickly and easily. There we go. Next, we'll be calculating division. So on the division tab, what we want to do with our division statement here is to calculate what percentage of the total sales comes from each month. Well, in order to do that, before I can do my division, I need a total. So we're going to select the 3-month sales and the blank cell that we want the total to go into and use the auto sum just like we did in the previous exercise. So I can see that my total is 2,200. Now comes the division. So in cell E9, what I want to do is create a division statement that will take the part, that's the January sales, and divide it by the whole, that's the total in cell C7. So I'm going to go ahead and click in cell E9, type the equal sign, click on my January sales, and the symbol for division in Excel is the slash, and then I can divide that by the total. So the total is in cell C7, that's the 2,200. I press the Enter key, and I have my answer there. I'm going to go into February and do the same thing. Equal the February sales divided by the total sales, and pressing the Enter key. And last but not least, the March, I can type in the equal sign, click on the March sales, the division symbol, and then clicking on the total once again. So I can take a look at this and see that the largest percentage comes from March with 41, February is second with 36, and January is third with 23%. Next, we'll look at a few functions. So on the Functions tab, the first function we'll be looking at is the sum function. We'll use a nice shortcut that will give us the ability to simultaneously add a total row along with a total column. To make this happen, all we need to do is select the cells that we'd like to add up, the blank cells underneath where we want the totals to display, and the blank cells on the right where we want the totals to display. Then we're clicking the Auto Sum button, and our formulas are inserted there. And just to point out, in row 6, it's adding, the calculations are adding up the cells above it. So for example, in B6, the formula is B3 through B5, so it's adding up the numbers above it. Over in column H, it is adding up the numbers to the left of it. So we can see in cell H3, the total is 2860, and that 2860 comes from cells B3 through G3. So these cells are what's feeding the calculations in column H. Next up, we want to do an average. So we'll click in in cell B8 where we want the average to display. We'll use the down arrow attached to Auto Sum and choose Average. Then it's just a matter of selecting the 3 numbers that we'd like to calculate the average on. That's going to be cells B3, B4, and B5. And once I've done that, I just press the Enter key. The next function up is the highest function, or the max function, I should say. We can find that also through the drop-down attached to Auto Sum, just choosing the max function and selecting the cells that I want to perform that on, and press the Enter key. And the last calculation here would be the min function. So I'm going to use the down arrow, choose the min, and select the cells to find out which one is the lowest value, pressing the Enter key when I'm done. So we calculated for January the average, the highest, and the lowest. And we want to apply those same calculations to February, March, and through June. So if you want to copy formulas across your columns, you're going to have to drag the fill handle. Once again, the fill handle is in the bottom right, a little green box. You drag that across to whatever cell you would like to carry the formulas across to, and just let go of the mouse. So I'm in column G. I'm going to let go of my mouse button, and it will go ahead and copy the formulas to the remaining months. Next, on the Absolute tab, we'll be looking at using absolute reference when you're copying your formulas. So first, let's take a look at why we need to make absolute references from time to time. In this example, I want to calculate the tax. The tax amount is in cell C5, and the price is in cell D8. So you would think I'd be able to take the unit price and multiply it by the tax rate to calculate the tax. So this one looks good, 21.52, that sounds about right. The problem comes when I try to copy that down to the remaining items. Let's take a look at what went wrong. The original formula was correct. It multiplied D8 times C5. So I'm just going to double click on that cell and show you what it's doing. It's multiplying D8 times C5, and that is 100% correct. I'm going to press the escape key to get out of there and go on to the next one. So when I copied the formula down, what it did was adjust where the unit price is, which is correct, but it also adjusted where it's looking for the tax rate. And unfortunately, it's now trying to do that multiplication on a blank cell. So I'm not getting correct answers. I'm going to press the escape key and go to the next one. And it gets even worse there. It's now multiplying by text. So of course I'm going to get some errors. Well, let's get rid of that. Just selecting those cells and pressing the delete key. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and do it properly so that I can copy the formula. And to make that happen, I'm going to use what's known as an absolute reference. An absolute reference in Excel is necessary when you want to anchor one part of the formula or a part of the formula, and you don't want that to adjust no matter where you copy it to. So we refer to that as absolute reference. It's like anchoring a particular cell, and the symbol for your absolute reference is the $sign. But luckily there's a shortcut key that will get that in there. So let's take a look at doing this properly now. It's going to be equal the unit price, which is sitting in cell D8, times, again, the symbol for multiplication is the asterisk, and the tax rate, which is sitting in cell C5. C5 is the cell that I want to make an absolute reference. So I could type $signs in before the letter C and after the letter C, but there is an easier way to get that done, and that's the function key along the top of the keyboard that you're looking for to make that happen is the F4 function key. So if I press the F4 function key, it writes the $signs in. The $signs, once again, are the symbols for absolute reference. And what an absolute reference does is anchor that part of the formula so you can copy it anywhere you want, and Excel will not adjust that part of the formula. The D8 part, it will continue to adjust. So as we copy this down to row 9, Excel will adjust that to say equal D9. This formula is now fixed, so I'm going to press the Enter key. And the true test, of course, is using that fill handle, either dragging it or double clicking. And we get much better results now. Again, what it's doing is it's multiplying the unit price down one more row, which is in row 9, by the tax rate. So it is adjusting the unit price portion of the formula, but not the tax rate. The only way we were able to do that is by anchoring or absolute referencing that cell C5. And that concludes our program for today. Thanks for attending, and hope to see you again soon.